Hi everyone! Today we'll talk about one of the most iconic cutscenes in the Battalion Wars series, the intro cutscene for the Solar Empire campaign of Battalion Wars 2. I was rewatching it the other day and I noticed some details there that I would like to share. The cutscene opens with a wide shot of a beautiful Solar Empire bay. Most notably, you can see a building with an architecture typical of what you can find in the coral atolls. You can also see the docks on the far side of the bay, and you can see the boat in which Betty and Herman are sitting. Keep in mind this picture of the bay because we'll come back to it later on. Now, about the boat specifically. This boat is probably a modified frontier frigate, as suggested by some of the detailed protruding from the ship. Obviously, the cutscene version has far better textures, a control panel has been added, and Betty is using it to drive the ship, and the anti-air missile launcher has been removed to make room for Herman. Herman is chilling and reading a newspaper, so let's read it too. Of course, the headline is "A New Weapon", in reference to the alleged solar superweapon. But there are some other stuff we can decipher here, albeit not much. The bottom of the first page reads "Rumors of Doomsday Device abound", and there's even a picture of the satellite weapon. In the back page, we can see some kind of QR code in the bottom left corner of the page. In the next shot, where the newspaper is visible, the title of the back page is Backpage Extra. There's a picture of Colonel Windsor, and unfortunately I was not able to decipher the text. Fortunately, the following shot is closer to the newspaper, and here there are 4 things to note. 1. Fun in the sun or boys and girls at sea. But I am not sure about the first fun word. 2. Our top 10 Sol Beaches special pellet guide. 3. Some text we cannot decipher on the top right of the front page. 4. And most intriguingly, this El Mundo mentioned here at the top left of the front page. El Mundo is Spanish and it means the world, and it's the title of a well-known Spanish newspaper. But what I would really like to know is the smaller text under El Mundo. It kinda looks like an email address or an URL address of some sort. You can almost see that it ends with elmundo.eu or something like that. Very hard to make out though. Anyway, the cutscene proceeds and the Anglo attack begins, with formations of fighters and bombers flying overhead. The shot where Herman removes his glasses unfortunately does not allow us to get a better look at the newspaper. The next shot shows Anglo bombers attacking the Solar Empire battleships. Now here's a little something I noticed, and it's quite jarring once you've seen it. The animators for this shot did not bother to make the decals transparent on the Solar battleship. As you know, I've made quite a lot of 3D animations using the Battalion Wars 3D assets. And I know these decals pretty well. These little decorations are not actually part of the texture. They are additional decals superimposed over the texture. It's very easy to make them transparent, and it's pretty surprising that the animators for this cutscene did not notice this mistake. The next shot follows the Anglo airplanes as they bomb the solar ships. This shot is interesting because it shows us the beach from a different angle. You can see rocks, some huts, and even an Easter stone head. In the distance you can see forests and a big mountain. At first I thought the mountain might be the Big Honshu, but the map screen makes it pretty clear that the mission Showdown at Big Honshu takes place pretty far away from the initial Anglo attacks. And there's some evidence suggesting, although not conclusively, that the events depicted in the cutscene happen not far from the first mission of the campaign, called Anglo Attack. For one, the skybox is very similar. It's possible the animators used the same skybox as the one seen in-game in the first Solar mission. Secondly, the general shape of the bay is kinda similar to the shape of the beach scene in-game, although the bay in the cutscene does look bigger. Thirdly, in the first solar mission, the docks are located on the far side of the beach, just like in the cutscene. However, you cannot see the big building on the other side of the beach, but what you can see is a big Easter stone head, just like the one you can see in the cutscene. And these are called moai, by the way. The next shot shows Commander Pierce's airplane flying in the sky. Then we can see Pierce himself in his cockpit. I don't have much to say about it, except that you can see some of the Anglo fighters maneuvering outside, and of course the interior of the cockpit itself is a lot more detailed than what you would see in the actual game if you could enter the cockpit. Which you can't anyway.
Whatever do you mean, Commander Pierce?
The next shot is pretty interesting because it's the only view ever of the interior of a ship in Battalion Wars. The walls are made of metal, and we can see some pipes and a lot of rivets, as one would expect. Out of the window we can see ships and airplanes, and if you look carefully, you can see that the ship actually bobs up and down, which is cool attention to detail. Behind Colonel Windsor, we can see a door on which a panel reads "Crew Only". The door can be opened with a turning wheel, and there's a panel with text that seems to be instructions on how to operate the wheel. Unfortunately, the text is too small to be made out. However, we can clearly see a rotating icon or symbol. Next to the door, we can see an alarm panel that reads "Action Stations" with exclamation marks on both sides of the word station, which I found funny for some reason. The panel and the light under it blink in rhythm with a soothing alarm sound.
Whatever do you mean, Commander Pierce?
In the next shot, which is shown through the point of view of Windsor's binoculars, we can see some Solar Empire ships in the water. You will notice that the animators just gave up and removed the decals entirely in these shots. There's also a solar battleship partly below the horizon line in the distance. After Windsor gives his well-known order to fire, the next shot shows an Anglo battleship firing. This cutscene must have been produced early during the game's development, because the ships don their early concept art brownish colors, which, as most would agree, actually fit the Anglo units better than the bright yellow they were given in the final release. Then the solar battleship explodes, and we transition to the personal quarters of Empress Leo. The only notable details in this shot are the vases on the right and the sliding door behind the vases, with some mountain decorations. The decorations on the sliding doors are not much, but keep in mind that someone had to draw them somehow. Then, in the next shot, Admiral Akira comes in and we can see the other side of the room. But unfortunately the field of view is too restrictive to make out any interesting details. In the next shot, there's some red stuff behind Akira's arm, but it's too blurry to be made out. Then we have a shot that is basically the same as the first Leo shot.
History has come full circle. It is just as I have foreseen.
The cutscene ends with some newspaper front pages. Solar super weapon, remorse trigger Anglo hostilities. There's a picture of Akira and Leo with the mention Empress Leo and Admiral Akira pictured earlier today. In this first newspaper front page, the text is too small to be legible. However, you can see that this paragraph has been copy-pasted below. The following newspaper reads, "Anglo attack, Island nation launches preemptive strike." You will notice that although it's a copy of the DMZ Enquirer, the Elemondo stuff from earlier does not appear here. Instead, we have a more generic mention that reads the official Western Frontier frontline paper. On the right of this front page it reads the soldier's friend, and below that there are some additional lines of text, but it's too low res to be legible. And again, the main text body is too small to be legible. The last newspaper reads, Solar Empire sunk, frontier allies rally round, with some cool pictures of the earlier Anglo attack on General Herman and Brigadier Betty. Now that last front page is really interesting because some of the text can be made out. Look here. The Solar Empire is developing a devastating super weapon. Commander Pierce and Colonel Windsor of Anglo Island launch a preemptive strike in the Coral Atolls. The world is once again at war. General Herman and Brigadier Betty of the Western Frontier were in the atolls when the Anglo strike, and Empress Leo and Admiral Akira of the Solar Empire in repelling the invaders. Haunted by the ghost of his militaristic father, Tsar Gorgi, Marshal Nova of the Tundran Territories agrees to an alliance with the... and I cannot read more than that, unfortunately. I can kinda make out more words below, more individual words, but not full sentences, unfortunately. And that concludes this cutscene analysis. I hope it was enjoyable enough, and I'll see you on the flip side.